Hello and welcome back to Women's Football Talk, the YouTube channel that brings you all the latest news and stories from around the world of women's football. Now before we get into today's video, make sure you like and subscribe and turn on that post notification bell so you never miss a video of ours. So on Thursday evening, the 22nd of September, 15 Spanish players announced they had resigned from the national team and will not play again for the team whilst current head coach Jorge Vilda is in charge. Now those 15 players are Jorge Vicente, Patrick Guayaro, Sandra Paños, Amior Saguri, Leila Wahabi, Lucia Garcia, Mapi Leon, Ana Badji, Leia Alexandri, Claudia Pina, Aitana Bonmati, Mariana Caldente, Lola Gallardo, Nera Izaguirre and Andrea Pereira. Now, why are they effectively resigning and retiring from the national team? It is because they are unhappy with how Jorge Vilda's side are doing in the terms of lack of winning games and lacking of trophies, and his lack of willingness to change how he's set up and how he's going. Now there was murmurs during the last international break before the season started that players were unhappy with Jorge Vilda. However, in a press conference they were forced practically to come out and deny those reports at the time. However, it is obviously since came out that they aren't happy with how he is running things, and they have said basically we will not play for Spain whilst he is in charge. Now the Real Federación Española de Fútbol, aka the RFEF, have said the Royal Spanish Federation communicates that throughout today it's received 50 emails from players of the senior national team, coincidentally all with the same wording, in which they state that the current situation generated it affects significantly their emotional state and their health, and that as long as it's not reversed, they resign from the Spanish national team. The RFEF is not going to allow the players to question the continuity of the national coach and his coaching staff. Since making those decisions does not fall within their powers, the Federation will not admit any type of pressure from any player when adopting sporting measures. These types of manoeuvres are far from exemplary and outside the values of football and sport are harmful. So basically all those players that have now resigned from the Spanish national team will not be up to selection, and that any player may actually face a 2 to 5 years suspension from playing for the national team even if the head coach does change. So Jorge Vilda's contract was actually extended pre-European Championships until 2024, and the Spanish FA are determined to keep him in charge until at least after this current World Cup, which is obviously next year. So it is a big blow for those 15 players if they're not being able to play for the national team just because of the fact that they don't agree with the national team head coach. Now Jorge Vilda, the current coach of the national team, is the son of Angel Vilda, who is the current head of the women's department in the Spanish Federation. So basically they're saying after 7 years and zero trophies, it's time for Vilda to go. However, obviously the Spanish FA are determined that he stays there and sees out the end of his contract. Now this isn't the first time that this kind of stuff has happened before, because back in 2015, after their poor performance at the Canadian World Cup, all 23 of the team called on Ignacio Quereda to resign, and then he did eventually resign after their poor performance, and after 139 games in charge he resigned as of the 30th of July 2015. Now since then obviously Jorge Vilda has been in charge of the Spanish women's national team, and it hasn't been the best of times under him. Now obviously most recently at this European Championships where they were quite poor, and a lot of people stated how poor they were throughout the tournament. It was widely expected as well that many of the team players weren't happy that his contract was extended pre-World Cup, and that these type of murmurs were going to come out post-European Championships, and obviously they have done since. Now obviously with the Ignacio Quereda stuff back in 2015, he was accused of abuse and homophobia, and it was actually came out that he has, I believe, been found guilty of those stuff. Now, this isn't 100% stuff, but there was a lot of damning stuff that came out about him, and he was very against modern players, and not just modern players but their sexuality and everything. So it's very interesting to see how the Spanish FA at the time then acted, and because it says the Spanish players back then tried to get rid of Carrera, but the ex-Royal Spanish FA Federation President Angel Maria Villar reportedly dismissed their concerns and often enabled the coach's abuse. He was finally dismissed in 2015 after the players went to the press with their concerns, and Vera Burkett claimed the RFEF had to sack him due to public pressure. Now, this is going to be very interesting to see how the Spanish FA react to this time. Now, obviously, there's only 15 players at the minute. However, there may be more come out in the near future as to regards to Jorge Vilda's time. Now, with the fact that the Spanish FA are saying that they're not willing to ply into this pressure, and the fact that Jorge's father Angel is a part of the board, it makes it seem likely that they won't apply and fall into any of the pressure being mounted on them by the 15 players aforementioned, and that Vilda will then subsequently stay in charge. Now, bearing in mind we are just 2 weeks away from the next set of international breaks, it would be very interesting to see, because his team news will likely be out next week, and what those implications have on the players that are selected, and whether any more of them players, if they're first time players getting called up, whether they will actually go to the camp or will they come out and publicly criticise Jorge Vilda themselves. So that's going to be something very interesting to watch over the next couple of weeks. It's not something that's going to go away in the near future because of, like I said, the World Cup next summer, and if Vilda is still in charge, which according to reports, and it all seems likely that he will be, where they go from here. Now, because obviously them 15 players are quite a lot of key players, but not all of them. Obviously the likes of Alexia Putellas not being involved in the squad at this minute, maybe that's why she hasn't been a part of the team backing the players to sack Jorge Vilda, but it's going to be very, very interesting to see where they go from this situation. Now, me personally, when it came out during the last international break that there was a lot of murmurs around that they were unhappy with Vilda and they wanted him out, I honestly thought that the players were going to go on strike during their 2 games, and that they would show up and be training with him, but the fact that when it came to game day they wouldn't play or go on strike, and that the opponents would get the automatic 3-0 win. However, they obviously went on to play. So if you've got a bunch of unhappy players in the world that we live in now, player power is really strong in terms of management. You see it all across football where players down their tools, so-called doing so, and then eventually getting the manager sacked. So whether that does happen with this Spanish side remains to be seen, and it will be very interesting to see what happens over this next international break in 2 weeks' time, and whether any more players come out in the near future regards to what Jorge Vilda does and his future. And like I said, if they then stick with Vilda throughout this tenure and obviously the World Cup next year and he fails, could this be a solution that could have been solved? Because we could be sat here 12 months down the line post World Cup looking, okay, Spain didn't have a good World Cup, they get knocked out, say the group stages or in the knockout stages early on, and you never know, a change of coach and change of ways and tactics and everything could actually give the Spanish players a boost in what they need. Or it could just be that they stick with Vilda until his contract runs out in 2024, and then it's the same cycle. But will then players then come back into the fray under a new management? It remains to be seen, obviously, because we're just going on this on a theory basis on whether players will be available for selection or not. So it doesn't surprise me that it came out that 15 players have resigned, but I think the timing's a bit strange that we're 2 weeks away from the next international period. I was expecting maybe next week when the teams would be announced, or prior to the last international break ending. But that is the main story of today, is that 15 players from the Spanish national team have resigned until Jorge Vilda is no longer the head coach of the Spanish national team. Right, that is all. Make sure you like and subscribe and turn on the post notification bell, and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for all the latest news and stories from around the world of women's football. And until next time, we'll see you soon.